This week on Hometown Ghost Stories, it seems that every home and business in Skagway, Alaska is haunted. From the old saloon that used to be a brothel, to their haunted hotel where guests reportedly get choked by anyone who dares to sleep in one of the haunted rooms. These and many more are some of the places that we'll cover as we take a trip through haunted Skagway, Alaska.
Hometown Ghost Stories contains serious and often distressing events and is not intended for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Janine stared at the bar. Her eyes darted around, trying to process what she was looking at. She had just set up for the morning, and everything around her had now been thrown around. As she sat there in shock, a creaking noise began to work its way up the staircase. Janine's fright turned to anger. "Who's there? This isn't funny," she yelled out the doorway that headed towards the staircase. "If you don't show yourself, I'm gonna call the police," she screamed. As she got that last line out, she heard a giant crash come from upstairs. Startled, Janine slowly started heading towards the phone. After her third step, all hell broke loose. She heard what sounded like boxes and bureaus being thrown against walls, all throughout the second floor. She dashed to the phone and dialed 911. As she cried for help into the phone, the operator stayed on the line with her and assured her the officers would be there quickly. A few moments later, as the noise continued, there was a hard knock at the door, and an officer shouting to let Janine know he was there. She hung up the phone and ran to the door, fumbling with the deadbolt before finally getting it open, as the crashing continued behind her. The officer and his partner stepped inside and tried to quickly calm the woman down as their eyes looked towards the staircase, and the crashing continued upstairs. "We'll be right back. We're gonna go see who's up there," Officer Lewis said as he tried to calm Janine. The officers approached the staircase and began to head up. As soon as Officer Lewis's foot landed on the first stair, the crashing stopped. The officers looked at each other puzzled. They slowly headed up the stairs, and just as they were halfway, a shadow walked past the staircase, continuing down the hall, followed by a slamming door. The officers quickly headed up and down the hallway to the room. They announced they were entering and swung the door open, but no one was there. All the windows were locked from the inside, and there was no other exit. Whoever or whatever it was that they saw had disappeared without a trace. I'm Rob Coakley, and this is Hometown Ghost Stories, Skagway, Alaska. Skagway sits in the southeastern portion of Alaska on the Panhandle. Originally, it was created in 1897 in order to provide services for prospectors during the Klondike Gold Rush. Skagway, in the beginning, was a lawless town, and the Northwest Mounted Police referred to it as, quote, "a little better than a hell on earth," end quote. Over time, the port town would begin to establish itself more, and as of today, it is a vibrant tourist destination. Although a place to escape and have fun, the locals also believe that Skagway is extremely haunted. In fact, the locals believe that every building has a haunting of its own. The White House Inn has a very long and interesting history. Built in 1902, it held a number of different types of businesses within it. A home, a hospital, a daycare, and now a hotel. In the 1980s, the hotel itself underwent a significant fire, and recently, it's been restored. Many people throughout the years have seen the apparition of a woman appear within the building. Since it's become a hotel, guests have reported seeing her at the foot of their bed. A number of guests have even reported a woman talking to their children before she disappears. This has led many to believe that she is the former owner of the daycare from the same location. The hauntings at the White House Inn seem to be jovial in nature, which won't be the case for many of the other locations that we cover in Skagway. In 1898, Klondike Ike and his fiancée Mary traveled to Skagway in order for Ike to join the gold rush. They rented a room at the Golden North Hotel, and once settled into room 23, Ike would leave Mary there while he sought their fortune. Days would turn into weeks, and weeks into months, and Mary began to get sick. It turned out she had pneumonia and would eventually succumb to the illness before Ike made it back. Since her passing, hauntings have been reported at the Golden North Hotel, and people have started referring to the ghost as Scary Mary. The ghost of a woman has been seen walking up and down the halls, but room 23 is where the hauntings take a terrifying turn. Guests have reported the feeling of cold spots within the room and waking up to being choked and unable to breathe. The Golden North Hotel no longer operates as a hotel per se, but the hauntings have continued, and many have seen the apparition of a woman staring out the window of what used to be room 23. The Eagles Club was formed in 1899 in Skagway. Eventually, they would create their own building by combining two separate hotels. They acquired the Mondamin Hotel in 1916, and then later in 1920, attached the Pacific Hotel to the rear to increase the size. In 1927, the hall began doing the stage show called Days of 98, which is a variety show put on and is the longest running theater production in Alaska. It is believed that several different spirits reside here, some friendly and some on the darker side. Charity, the now co-owner, arrived in Skagway in 2001 to be a cast member on the show. Night after night the first year, she would witness the then owner Jim purchase a shot of whiskey for what he said was the ghost. She didn't believe in it, and the day after he told her why, Charity would have her first experience. As she headed to the back of the dark theater, she saw a shadow of darkness moving throughout the back of the room that she couldn't explain. Quote, "I just looked at that upstairs corner of the backstage area and it was extremely black, like Vanta black. And then the blackness moved. The blackness itself just slowly moved straight across the theater, and then I could see back in that corner. It was still dark, but it wasn't pitch black. It was so bizarre. I stood there trying to figure out how this was happening and what's happening. I just felt all the weird, crazy, horrifying feelings when you can't explain something. It was enough that 20 years later, it still makes me shake a bit." End quote. The hauntings haven't stopped though. Quote, "I can be listening to an audiobook, and all of a sudden, I feel this pressure. It always comes from the theater, and it comes from the same direction. It feels like when you hold your hand up next to your head and you talk, and you can hear the difference." It feels like this crazy, malevolent feeling of, get out. It's not words. It's just a feeling. And it's terrifying. End quote. She has described the ghost as a malevolent male presence, and has since started buying the ghost shots of whiskey with hopes that he'll cease the hauntings. Perhaps the most well-known haunted location in all of Skagway is the Red Onion Inn. Built in 1897, the Red Onion Inn quickly became a brothel and had a very interesting twist on how they provided their services. The brothel would put 10 mannequins on display resembling the women that were working. If a mannequin was laying down, that meant that particular lady was with a client, and when she was available again, they would stand the mannequin back up. After its life as a brothel, it would continue on as a dance hall, army barracks, a bakery, laundry shop, union hall, and even a television station. Today, it's a restaurant and museum that leans into its history as the brothel, which works out because it appears some of the former workers and visitors of the place are still there in the afterlife. It is believed that at least 3 spirits haunt the Red Onion Inn. A male that is believed to be a former patron of the Red Onion Inn is said to not be a friendly spirit. A foul odor has been known to linger when it's believed he is around. People have felt someone bump them violently, and items have been known to move from place to place, all believed to be at the hands of the male spirit. Diamond Lil was a former madam of the establishment that seems to be the friendliest of these 3 spirits. She only communicates with male guests of the building. Many have claimed to feel a hand touch them and hear soft whispers in their ear, only for no one to be there. The most famous ghost of the Red Onion Inn is that of Lydia. It is believed that Lydia used to be one of the working girls of the establishment. The rumors are that she fell ill with an STD and died within the building, but those rumors have never been proven true. Along with cold spots and objects moving, a strong-smelling perfume usually accompanies Lydia's spirit. She has even been seen standing at the top of the staircase, wearing a dark dress, before disappearing. The staff have to greet Lydia upon entering the building, or things have been known to vanish until they acknowledge her. Men have a bit of a different encounter with Lydia than women do. Men that have gone on tours of the second floor of the saloon have reported being attacked. Scratch marks and pushing are the common ways of attacking for Lydia. These are just the 3 spirits that are known to haunt the Red Onion Inn. But with the wide history and numerous people passing in and out throughout the years, perhaps there's more than we know about. And with the attacks on the second floor, perhaps there's something lurking that's a bit more evil.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome into Hometown Ghost Stories, episode number 95. I'm Jesse Wilkins. I'm joined by Rob Coakley. Hello, Rob.
Do you think that we could get a mannequin made of Dave and just permanently replace him with that mannequin?
You know, we've had Captain McSlugs on the show a few times, and I think he would be easiest to replace with a mannequin because usually he doesn't speak when we have him on as a guest. So
That's fair.
actually, I did send him an invite because he has actually been to Skagway. My mother
Oh,
was
cool.
actually texting us during the intro to this, and they went on a cruise up to Alaska a couple of years ago. And actually, both of our little brothers went, Andrew and Seth. And so they have been there. So I do wonder if they have stories. Andrew, if you're watching, I did send you an invite. So check your text messages. Hello, Dave.
Hey, thanks
Hey.
for acknowledging my presence.
No problem. No problem. What's up to everyone hanging out in live chat? It is good to see you folks. It is spooky season. My lights are rapidly changing behind me. That means I need to adjust my sensitivity. In the meantime, check out this brand new spooky season animation. Wasn't that awesome? Just in time. Anyways, thank you all for hanging out. Yeah. So, Skagway, Alaska. Yeah, this is this, have we done in Alaska? This is part 2 in Alaska, right?
All right, so here's the deal with Alaska.
Let's
We
talk
were
about
counting it as we did it for an episode, but we technically only did half the episode in Alaska, so I felt as though it didn't count towards our map of states that we covered, and I just wanted to make sure we fully checked it off the box. And as I looked into Skagway, I was like, wow, this town is actually super interesting anyways, and we 100% need to cover it because they literally believe that every building in Skagway is haunted. That's what the locals believe. So they think that every single building, and I'm sure if you went there and talked to the people that like own the houses and stuff, they could give you more of the history. You're not going to find the hauntings for every single place online, but we covered quite a few in the episode, and we have a couple more to talk about during this discussion portion as well.
Yeah, there's a few places that we've covered that claim that virtually every building is haunted. One of those was Block Island, and we were told basically by multiple people, they're like, we're pretty sure every single house on this island is haunted. Every building, every house, they're all just haunted. And we stayed overnight in some random house, and it seemed super old, and I wouldn't have been surprised if it was haunted. And then the other one was wherever the Washoe Club is. Where was that one? I should know since I covered it. No, it wasn't Vegas. Was it Vegas? No, it wasn't Vegas.
Well, it was Nevada.
It was Nevada. Somewhere in Nevada. I don't really remember. Anyways, that one, they had also said that virtually every building there is haunted as well. So this isn't the first time that we've run across a place like this. And I suppose with situations like this, do I think every building is haunted? It's possible, but I think it's more likely that you have so many haunted locations in this one place that you know, the legend kind of grows and grows, and everyone's like, well, this place is haunted too. And when you're expecting it around every corner, then you kind of attribute everything to a haunting. We deal with a lot of this kind of stuff when we talk about cursed possessions, where all of a sudden, if you think you're cursed, then every single thing that goes wrong in your life it must be because of that curse. It's kind of just like a mental thing, or it could be a legit curse. And every single building here could be haunted. Somebody banned Wilhelmina immediately. And anyways,
yeah, so it is claimed to be like the most haunted town in Alaska. It has some really good stories. I do find some of them more credible than others, and we're going to get into it. But yeah, it is it was like a treasure trove of ghost stories as I was researching Skagway. There's just so many things, and I'm kind of jealous of the people that have gone and visited Skagway. It is a port city on a lot of these cruises in Alaska. They stop there, and it seems like it's a great time. The whole town sounds great.
I've never been to Alaska, but it's one of those places that I really want to go to. Just seems like such a cool, no pun intended, a cool place to go to.
It really does. So, you know, just everywhere you have those awesome views. Washoe Club was Virginia City, Nevada. That's how we're supposed to say it, right? Anyways, yeah, Virginia City. That was the town. Right. So, but yeah, Alaska looks amazing. I think that Andrew and Seth and our parents, they went on a cruise that went up there, and some of the pictures that they took, it did look super, super cool. So this is another one of those towns where just as soon as I see it, I'm like, all right, I'm in. Put it on the list.
I'll put it on the little list.
Add that to my tiny little list.
The small list of Jesse.
That's right. Right. Ulysses with a great comment says, take a cruise, see some ghosts, pet a moose.
Don't try and pet a moose. It's a terrible idea. You'll die.
You
Those
don't
things are
know.
vicious.
We don't make the rules.
We don't. That's true.
All right. Shall we start talking about some of these hauntings, gentlemen?
Let's jump into it.
All right. I want to start with the Golden North Hotel. And I want to start with the haunting of Scary Mary and Klondike Ike. And I want to start with it because it's absolutely, completely bullshit.
First of all, slow down. Slow down. It's worthy of note that these two have the best names of any ghost couple that's ever graced our show with their presence.
Yeah.
Scary
but
Mary
that's
and Klondike
part of it.
Ike. I love it.
But that's literally part of it, right? Like there's just, it's too perfect that these are their names, Klondike Ike, Scary Mary. And we're going to get into it, right? So let's get into why this place isn't actually haunted. And this is the one where she was supposedly waiting there while he went to find their treasure and she got pneumonia and died. Well, the granddaughter of the people who actually like turned this place into a hotel, she is still in Skagway, and she kind of breaks down what actually happened here with the hotel. So basically, what happened is her grandparents moved to Skagway during part of the gold rush because they couldn't find jobs in the lower 48. For a time, they operated a laundromat. In 1907, they opened the Golden North Hotel in Skagway because the grandmother didn't want to wait tables or be a chambermaid. The domed hotel was originally a mercantile building during the gold rush. It was moved to its current location on State Street. At that point, it was a 2-story building and it was transported on rollers, which is super cool. And you actually hear a lot about buildings in Skagway getting moved around, which is really strange.
Yeah, anytime I hear that a building got moved, I'm like, that just sounds like a process that I wouldn't want to do.
Well, I think that with these old gold rush towns is they used to basically just bring them in like segments and just set them up almost like a carnival or like a town fair or something, and then break them down when they move out of town. That's what happened with the ghost town next door that we'll probably talk about later.
Yeah, same thing with like Tombstone. If you notice, Tombstone, they called it a camp for a long time. They didn't even call it a town. So it was like, this is the nice camp you got set up here. And it was because as they would move on to go find gold, they would just basically roll the town down to the road, and move on to the next site as they continue to search for gold or silver or whatever.
So another interesting thing with this building is they eventually jacked the building up because it was only 2 stories. And instead of building a 3rd floor on top of it, they jacked the building up and built a new 1st floor for the building, which is insanity. It blew my mind. So
it seems like a much more difficult way to do things, right?
Yes.
You'd think it would be, but maybe that floor was so like beyond saving that they're like, all right, we need a brand new bottom floor. Or maybe that's just the way they did it. I don't know.
So the reason why I prefaced the story with this is because of the next part. So to increase business, Al Becker said the family who owned the hotel decided in the late 1960s to say the place was haunted. Details of the haunting are murky, but according to Al Becker, the story, and Al Becker's the granddaughter of the people who owned it, the story went that a woman died in the hotel after coming to Skagway to meet up with her fiance during the gold rush. The ghost, known as Mary or Scary Mary, supposedly haunts the hotel's 3rd floor dome. They even had a seance to prove her presence, said a skeptical Albecker, who explained that the owner, Ruth, borrowed Albecker's wedding dress to stage photos of the ghost. And then she goes on to say, other than the fact that it wasn't a hotel, it wasn't a hotel at the time that they're saying it was a hotel for the ghost story. It is no longer a hotel again. It didn't have a 3rd floor at the time, which is where she supposedly haunts. And it didn't happen during the gold rush, but it made for a good story. But there are people who want to believe it, and they swear on a stack of Bibles that they've seen her. So people are still saying that they see this ghost, but the actual story behind the ghost haunting is completely fabricated.
It sounds like it could have been made up. That doesn't mean people aren't seeing ghosts there. But
that was going to be my next point. So the actual story itself is, when you hear that, there's no way that story is legitimate.
Right.
But
There isn't even a
again,
third floor for them to haunt. It wasn't even a hotel, so there's no checking in. It does sound like that story was completely made up. And the reason being would be for monetary purposes, right? And
yeah.
forgive me if I'm stepping on your toes, just step right on mine and tell me to stop. But my thought would be business in that area is probably slow in the winter because it's probably
Mhm.
absolutely freezing. So a way to drum up business would be come up with a cool ghost story and say your hotel's haunted.
Which you would think so too, but my only thing with that is, and that's exactly what she said in the article. That's why they did it. But for what's weird to me is the 1960s. I didn't think that they were doing things like this with haunted buildings and trying to bring people in the 1960s.
I don't think
So
so either. I think it was the opposite. I don't think we got the paranormal craze where people were visiting haunted locations like attractions until after the satanic panic of the 70s and 80s. Before then, people were afraid of this. If you had a haunted house, it would kill your property value. So it
mm,
was taboo. You wouldn't
Maybe.
want anyone to know that your location was haunted because people were genuinely afraid of it. The further back in time you go, the more afraid people were
Yeah, but the
because they,
interest was always there. So it was like you had these, if you go back a little further, you had these people who were holding seances and they're becoming world famous for it. And this was their business.
right.
So it's
That
like
was
people
after the
were,
that was post civil.
sorry, I was just going to say that like the interest has always been there. So whether or not people are afraid of it, other people were always drawn to it. Ghost hunting
Right.
goes back a long time.
Well, you could
So
draw. Sorry, I you could
sorry,
draw a
no,
line.
Dave
I
just
agree. I
saving
agree
real
with you.
hard.
I agree with you that that at this time they probably were. It was more of a risk. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I was saying is you could draw a line between these two things. The seances post Civil War, where people were basically psychic mediums tapping into the grief that so many families were stricken with after pretty much every family in America lost loved ones in the Civil War, and there was a demand for people wanting to communicate after that loss. So that was more like you would go see a medium if you wanted to contact your loved one. People weren't going to haunted houses saying like, "Ooh, this is spooky. Let's look for ghosts." There's totally you could draw a perfect line right between those two things, and they're completely separate. So on one hand, yes, you had a craze for psychic mediums and people wanting to contact with their dead loved ones, and people would be afraid if a house was haunted by a spirit that they aren't familiar with.
Right. It was a different time, and you had a much more. I don't even know how you put it, like a conservative kind of look at things where they didn't want to deal with any ghosts, they didn't want to deal with any people, being improper on TV, they wanted to ban Elvis because his hips were moving too much while he was dancing. So obviously like times were different, but I don't think that interest in the paranormal or the natural just disappeared after that psychic craze after the Civil War. So I'm
I don't
saying
think
like
the interest disappeared. I think it was just different. The interest was there. They just wanted to contact their loved ones, not so much go hunt ghosts in general. I think that they were afraid of haunted things, but there was a different, basically subset of people that wanted to contact their loved ones. I think they're entirely different.
yeah, I agree. And it definitely isn't what it is today, which is now it's a whole selling point, right? So I
Right.
would see this as to go back to our original point instead of debating on the same exact point over and over again. But to go back to the original point, I think this would be something that would be much more likely to happen right now or within the last 10 years, where a hotel rebrands itself as a haunted hotel because it's going to bring people in, especially in the off season in a place like Alaska.
Agreed.
But that was the point for she's saying that's why they did it though. They were staging photos and stuff. So
Exactly.
that's I just don't get it because I'm in agreement with Dave that this wasn't common practice. So it's almost like they're in the front of this whole thing by years of doing this. And I wonder how it actually worked. It must not have worked great because it's not a hotel anymore.
Right.
It's like a building that has a bunch of different businesses in it. So I don't know when that transformation happened again. So
I'd be curious to look at like the history of other haunted hotels and see if there are other ones that also followed in this path. Because while I agree with you guys, I think I'm a little bit further away from like I think that would be a selling point, and it is possible that could have happened in the 60s. But we'll move on from that. Andrew P dropping a $5 donation in Super Chat. He says, this month marks 1 year of listening to you guys. Thank you too much for being my favorite paranormal podcast. Andrew, thank you for being here. You're actually an OG here and an absolute legend. That's the same Andrew that has sent in ghost stories and everything, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Hell yeah. So Andrew, you're a legend. Thank you so much for that $5 donation. You, sir, are my favorite person on the planet.
That's nice of you. So I thought it was interesting to kick off with that particular story and just kind of call BS on the story portion. Like we said, the place could still be haunted. People still could be seeing paranormal activity. We are talking about an older building that has gone through a lot of different types of avenues of what type of building it was, hotels, shops, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think we have to call out the story though that is behind that one.
Yeah, if what this person is saying is true, then that completely debunks the entire ghost story, but it doesn't debunk witness testimony from people who have seen a ghost, right? Doesn't mean it's the ghost, but not necessarily. So they could be seeing something else. That doesn't mean they're not seeing a haunting. It just means that origin story is probably complete bullshit.
Yes, definitely. So after that, I think, Dave, if you don't mind, we should jump into the ghost town that is right on the outskirts of Skagway, because there's some interesting history that is there to cover as well.
Yeah, so there is the Chilkoot Trail, which is allegedly haunted, and this trail connects the Inside Passage in the Pacific Ocean to the headwaters of the Yukon River, and it starts in what's now a ghost town called Daia. So this town boomed during the Klondike Gold Rush of 1897, 1898, but it flashed. It was a real boom bust, real fast turnover, and now it's a complete ghost town. Started out as a fishing camp, but it's unknown exactly when it was established. It was primarily used as a trade route between the indigenous people who lived there and the Russian, Boston, and Hudson Bay trading companies. So that all went along until the mid-1880s, when a prospector got wind of the early pre-Klondike Yukon gold strikes dropping everywhere. So he stopped what he was doing and he headed north. So the boom began in the fall of 1897 when word hit papers, and at its peak, the town of Daia boasted over 150 buildings, with the large majority of them being restaurants, hotels, supply houses, and saloons. Daia competed on fairly even terms with Skagway through the winter of 1897 and 1898, but in the spring, Daia began to lose its competitive edge. So on April 3rd, 1898, there was this massive snowslide known as the Palm Sunday Avalanche on the Chilkoot Trail. It was a disaster that killed over 70 people, and this brought worldwide negative publicity, and some travelers steered away from Daia. The opening of the Yukon River brought a mass exodus from the town as the stampeders left for Skagway and their newly constructed railroad. So basically what happened is this town completely shut down and everybody went over to Skagway, and now this is a ghost town. A lot of the buildings collapsed, like we talked about earlier. They just packed them up and rolled them down the road to Skagway and opened up shop there. But most of this town still exists and is completely just a ghost town. And this is what begins the haunted Chilkoot Trail. So this goes through Daia, through Skagway, and people have experienced disembodied voices and the feeling of being watched. And it's apparently a very creepy place if you make it out that way.
Yeah, definitely. So, like, of all the places in Skagway, and I'd want to go to all of them, again, we've talked about this a few times recently. I want to do a haunted trail, haunted forest, because I want to just do the evidence collection on that. It's got to be the most difficult way to look into the paranormal, because of the wide open area. You don't really have like a base. You can start at the town, but you're wide open. You're not like confined within like a box, like a house or something like that. There's so many different ways to go with this, and where are you going to get that paranormal activity? And I think that's why the hauntings are so sporadic there, rather than being concentrated in a house or an area like that.
It is interesting, and we've talked about it and potentially doing it in a few places. We did do a little bit of outside investigation when we did the Oliver House in Middleborough, because the backyard is supposed to be haunted. There's supposed to be spirits. There's also supposed to be puckwudgies and light anomalies. And we did catch some sort of a strange orange glowing light. Who knows what it is? It's so difficult when you do these, but it's very different and very very intriguing. Like I have that same kind of drive to be like, yeah, let's go search a haunted forest. But it's like, it's so tricky because like
you get there and you're like, now what?
Yeah.
You got so much stuff that is so much harder to validate, right?
Yep.
Heat sent, like you could pick up something on thermal imaging. Could be one of the thousands and thousands of animals that might be in the area. So it's so hard at noise contamination. You basically throw all audio out the window. I've seen a lot of stuff in like graveyards where they get some interesting stuff on spirit boxes. So that's got to be obviously one of the go-tos. And then, however, probably easier to pick up on, or if you do pick up on an EMF spike, you could probably immediately chalk that up to something paranormal because there shouldn't be any electricity out there. So that is interesting. So it's, that might be a little bit better, but everything audio is just going to be a nightmare. So it's tricky.
Yeah, but it's definitely something I want to do. So glad we hit on that as well.
Yeah, this whole like avalanche thing, it's obviously a tragedy, and there's pictures of them recovering the bodies and everything. It's such a brutal way to go. That would be one of my least favorite ways to go, is anything that deals with the cold.
It was pretty hopeless too, because when that avalanche happened, so it had been like a record snowfall winter, and it happened in the spring, in April, when all of the snow basically started melting, and it just came down all at once down the side of the mountain and just buried 70 people under 30 feet of snow. So the second it dropped, they were just done. There was no shot.
Well, they did rescue, I think, 25 people. They said, they said that it was up to 40 or 50 people that were pulled from the snow.
That's crazy.
So I don't know if it must have just been like alive people, but they did say that at least 25 had been rescued. And then the Dia, is it, how do you pronounce that town name? Dia. Their newspaper claimed that 40 or 50 people were pulled from the snowpack because they had held onto a communal rope.
Oh wow! So yeah.
So I don't know if you mentioned it, but they were also warned not to go there, and they did anyways.
No, I didn't mention that.
Yeah, so that sucks. And it reminds me a little bit of. Did you guys watch that documentary about the people that kept visiting that active volcano?
No.
And then it was literally like erupting. Like it looked very dangerous. I don't really know anything about volcanoes, but I know when there's smoke billowing out of it, I'm going to stay far away. But yeah, a bunch of people went over there. Like they were just not busing, but they were boating people back and forth. And, tourists who wanted to do it, they knew the risk that they were taking. And then of course, one day it did erupt. Basically, this thing was erupting every 3 years. Anyways, that has nothing to do with this story, so we can move on. But interesting documentary. If you want to check that out, I'll find out the name of it. But yeah, right. If the locals warn you, stay away, this is dangerous, listen to the locals.
They probably know a little bit better than you do. They've been around for a bit.
Don't be that tourist.
Speaking of locals, let's lighten the mood a little bit. Gentlemen, not ghost related. He may be haunting the graveyard, but we need to have a discussion about Soapy Smith. You might be asking yourself who Soapy Smith is.
It doesn't sound trustworthy.
Soapy Smith was an accomplished 19th century con artist who owned saloons and gambling houses across the West. He came to Skagway during the gold rush and set up shop. Considered the crime boss of the Old West, his nickname was the result of the prized soap racket. I'll tell you about that in a second.
I can't believe that his name, Soapy Smith, wasn't because he was a slippery con man. That's what I would have bet $100. I would have bet you $100 that's where the nickname came from.
Yeah,
sure, a little bit to do with it, right?
There's some correlation. So we'll get into that in a second. But Smith was ultimately shot and killed in Skagway by a member of a vigilante committee after a shootout during which he tried to persuade the angry mob that he was no harm to the community. And Smith actually killed that man as well. So they both shot each other and both died.
Oh, wow.
He came to Skagway for the same reason everybody else came here. There were stories of gold in the Klondike, and they came up because they thought there was gold in the streets. Some stopped in Skagway and decided it was a good place to stop. He kind of took over Skagway. One of his biggest scams in Skagway was sending telegraphs back to the lower 48 states. And you might be wondering, how was that a scam? How did he scam doing telegraph stuff? Well, what he did was he had the wires that ran back to the lower 48 or whatever in his office. And they ran out into the back of his building and they just stopped there. And he literally never sent one telegraph that all these people were paying him for. He just
never even plugged them in.
they weren't plugged into shit. He just,
oh my God. He was just charging people to send telegrams.
He was just charging people to send telegrams. And then they just find out that never happened. Those were never sent anywhere. The reason that this man was called Soapy Smith is because back when he was in the lower 48, somewhere in the South, I believe it was Texas, but I'm not really sure. I can't remember the exact location. I think he actually traveled and did it. His con man racket was he was selling bars of soap, but he would actually like get up and like try to like sell them by like pitching them to the crowd. And his selling point was that he would take money and put it in the wrappers of the soap. So like every single town that he went to, he put $100 bill in one of the soaps so that when somebody bought it, they'd win $100 and, you know, start celebrating. And everyone's like, oh shit, I want to buy it and try to win one. Well, every single piece of soap that had money in it via sleight of hand would get sold to one of his gang members so that the same people were winning the money over and over again as they went town to town. And the people that were buying the soap and not getting anything were the locals.
So it was basically like they're his own version of 3-card Monty, where he has somebody in the crowd working for him. Yep. Gotcha. Dude, what a sleaze bag, man. I'm sitting there, I'm like, how is he scamming people with soap? Because you just buy the soap. What is it? Fake soap?
You've never seen Fight Club? He's Tyler Durden.
He basically is, yeah. I love this. I love this guy. Am I not supposed to? Maybe it's because like I really like the show Better Call Saul, and this is basically him, right? Just some like sleaze bag.
Yeah, so Soapy Smith, he's kind of a legend in Skagway. So we're going to talk about the Eagle Club where they run that 98 Days show. And if you kind of saw some of the highlights that I showed of that, the host of that show now is actually Soapy Smith, like a guy playing Soapy Smith.
Oh,
so
really?
He's almost like the town mascot, which is kind of weird. It's, you know, like, I mean, I guess some towns do it. You know, Al Capone is kind of a mascot for Chicago. Not that they don't have a ton of mascots. We have Whitey Bulger here. So I guess like these infamous guys do kind of become part of the town's like history and culture.
Yeah,
to a degree.
People embrace some of them and some of them they're relatively ashamed of them. But, you know, for example, like Villisca is known for the Villisca Axe Murder House. Amityville is obviously known for the Amityville House. Salem is known for the witches. So you do have your mascots for this town, but a lot of them, some of them want them and some of them don't.
Right.
Real quick, big shout out to Inspires, gifted 10 gifted YouTube memberships in chat. Thank you so much for the donation, buddy. You're an absolute legend. If you guys haven't already, check out Inspires on Twitch. He's a phenomenal streamer. Twitch.tv/X Inspires. Just search for Inspires on Twitch. You'll find him. And then Matthew T donating $5.01 in super chat. He says, Willy Wonka soap. Matthew T, you are now my favorite person on the planet. Thank you.
Just leave Andrew P by the wayside there.
It's really close. About a 1 cent. It's about a 1 cent difference between that. People there. So thank you guys for that. Once again, Inspires and Matthew T. Thank you guys.
Yeah. So those are some of the fun other stories that we have. I do have one more that we can hit on. It's pretty quick, but basically it is a haunted it's a haunted bookstore. If you guys want to hear about that real quick.
I like those.
So this is actually just across the street from the Red Onion Inn. And this is from Skagway News, by the way. Is Skagway News Depot and Books, an establishment that houses a lesser known Skagway spirit. The historical building is leased from the National Park Service. The shop features artifacts from bygone days of old newspapers and printing. It peddles books unique to Alaska life, such as preserving salmon and fictional murder mysteries that take place in the Arctic. Denise Welch, sales associate for the bookstore since 2000, thought the store was haunted from almost the beginning of her tenure. I suspected probably the second year that I was working here, Welch said. It kind of felt different sometimes. While Welch never felt anybody here, really, the problem was with the moving books. Welch often played a CD the store stocked. Robert Service poetry performed by local character Buckwheat Donahue. I got to noticing that if I didn't play the tape at least once a day, the books would fall off the shelf occasionally, Welch said, and it always seemed to be a Robert Service book. It was just one of those weird things that never failed to be a Robert Service book. I've moved bookshelves around since I've worked here, and no matter where the Robert Service books were, that's what would fell. So that is the haunting over at the bookstore. It's a slight one, but it's really interesting that it's the same author that the book's falling.
It's interesting and it's really specific.
Yeah,
Like, which isn't real common with ghost stories. You get a lot of like the same things usually: flickering lights, disembodied voices.
Do we know if that author maybe was from the area, or if he had ever been there? Because it could be that, or if he was dead at the time.
Well, they did say that all the books are specific to Alaska and the Arctic for the most part. So even if it's not that, even if he's not from there, then the books were about there. So, you know,
could be some sort of a connection. I mean, it's a bookstore. There could have been a book signing. Maybe
Yeah.
he did a book signing and died on the spot. Didn't have
he
to
did a
die
book
there.
signing and nobody signed. Nobody came to get a book signed.
That could have happened. You know what we say? We don't make the rules. I'm not gonna play the whole thing, but at the end of that clip, it says we don't make the rules. So now you guys know.
Scared the absolute hell out of me. I didn't know what was happening.
Mission
I was really
accomplished.
confused. Thought the
You
show
said,
was
the tagline, we don't make the rules. You know what I'm going to do is make like one of those Jack the Ripper screens that just says we don't make the rules, but then we're going to overdo it. Mixlog's asked the most important question that all of us were asking in our heads was he dead when he wrote the book? That's a good question. That would definitely make it haunted. So absolutely.
You know, what if it was the same book every time and then just, I mean, would be way too specific, but opening to the same chapter, that would be, that would be a very spooky haunting.
Getting some ideas for a new opening ghost story of the future.
But I wanted to bring all these other ones up just to prove like Skagway is full of haunted history. And I'm sure there's a dozen other stories that we couldn't even get into or find. I bet if you go to this town and you start asking some of the actual locals about like their buildings and their houses and stuff, you're going to get a ton of ghost stories. And it's just a real interesting town. And I do want to dive into some of the other ones that we talked about. Specifically, I don't know if any of these stories from the opening stood out to you guys, but one particularly stood out to me. Now, the Red Onion Inn is like the most popular destination, and it does seem like it has all the ingredients for a haunting, and we're going to talk about it because it does have some good stories and stuff. But for me, the one that stood out the most was this Eagles Club, the one with the theater, and that interview that I read of the woman who's like the co-owner of that place now. Some of her experiences just really were kind of chilling, like what she was experiencing in the back of the theater with the shadows and stuff. And when I was reading this particular story, I don't know if you had this same thought, Jesse, but it brought me back to Emily's Bridge, because she's talking about it being pitch black outside and this vision of like a shadow just kind of all encompassing, just swallowing up the area. And literally as I'm reading the story, it just kept replaying in my head, because I'll never forget that night. Like, of all the ghost things that we do and all the evidence we collect and everything, and we'll have scary moments and all that stuff, there's something about that particular moment. And we've talked about it before. We'll talk about it again. And I'm sorry if it's redundant to some people, but this particular moment was very unsettling and just really weird and unlike any other haunting that I have ever experienced before or since.
You're absolutely right. And actually, when you were reading that story, that's exactly what I was thinking of. Now, the visuals that you use put me at the Iroquois Theater, which we covered a while ago on the Chicago episode, just because it was a ruined theater. But the hauntings were relatively similar. Is there a theater in the world that isn't haunted? I feel like whenever you visit a town,
like
the theaters are always haunted.
Yes, there is a theater, and this is frustrating for me. so I was up in Maine, right? I went to a little town called Rangeley, Maine this past weekend. And I was like, perfect. I'm going to find all the ghost stories in this town and we're going to cover Rangeley, Maine, which we are still going to cover Rangeley, Maine, but there's this really creepy old movie theater there. And I'm like, this place has to be haunted. All the paint's peeling off it and everything. Right. I went in and I found the lady behind the counter. And I'm like, I got to ask you, tell me about all of the hauntings. Is this place haunted? She goes, nope, nothing. There's nothing here, not haunted. And I'm like, nobody here has ever had any? She's like, no, I'm sorry, there's nothing. She's like, but maybe if we Google something, we can find it. And we did that and we couldn't find anything. And it was, I was like, damn it. So there is at least one one movie theater that's not haunted.
The problem is you approached it all wrong. You're supposed to go in far more aggressive. You need to grab them and shake them and demand that they tell you about the ghosts. That's what you need to do.
That's probably the play next time.
Yeah.
Looks like we have a special guest to talk about Skagway with us.
We do. I was waiting for him to put in headphones. But we do have our resident mannequin. Oh, I can't wait to talk about the mannequins, man. That is the creepiest thing I've ever heard of. That's the creepiest thing I've ever heard of. Who came up with that policy? Because that is awesomely creepy. Speaking of awesomely creepy, we have the one and only Captain McSlugs, aka Andrew, back on the show. Actually, Andrew is he's been on the show quite a few times. So
hi.
Yes.
Welcome in. He has named himself Andrew, the resident expert on Skagway. You have been to the area. Tell us everything you know about Skagway.
Well, I went to Skagway for approximately 6 hours as a stop on a cruise line. And I was...
Thanks for your intel,
Skagway.
Andrew.
Yes, that's actually all I have to contribute. I don't know anything about this place.
All right. Well, thank you, Andrew, for coming on the show. We appreciate it. Everyone give him a round of applause.
Yeah, thanks for
thank
that.
you so much. Yeah, we appreciate
Very
it.
helpful monologue.
In case you were wondering, he legitimately just left. So what if Andrew actually, that was the most he has ever said on this show. So
it is.
Thank you once again, Andrew, for joining us on the show. We do appreciate it. It was glorious, man. It was glorious.
Yeah.
So can we jump into the Red Onion here?
Well, is there anything else you guys want to talk about with the theater? Because I mean, we talked about the shadows and stuff, and we go back. The other thing with the theater is I've started seeing this trend quite a bit is the drink. People kind of bartering with these spirits by buying them or pouring them a drink to try to get them not to haunt the place. And it kind of seems like it is working in a lot of these places. And as soon as they stop, the hauntings intensify.
Yeah, the first time I've ever seen anything like this was actually in New Orleans, and we're still backburnering New Orleans. All right, we'll get there eventually. But it was a certain restaurant, and I won't go into too many details because this will end up probably in the episode that we do. But I was on a ghost tour, and they were telling us about this one place where they would set out. The hauntings had gotten so extreme at this place that they would set out like a whole place for this ghost to eat dinner all by himself in his own separate room. And they would set him up with a bottle of wine and his own dinner plate and everything like that. And every single night they would serve him. I don't know if they're actually serving him food, like putting food on the table, but they would at least pour him a drink. And as soon as they started doing that, the hauntings had quieted down. And we'll get into more of those details on a later episode. But that was the first I had ever heard of, like a restaurant setting a place for a ghost or pouring a drink for a ghost. And now we're starting to hear about it all the time, where it's like, and a lot of times it's like a precautionary thing where if they don't do it, then all of a sudden, the hauntings get bad or people start getting messed with or taps will turn on or glasses will fly around and smash and break. And it seems like chaos just happens if you don't acknowledge this ghost's presence. And that seems to be the case with a few places like this.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It just keeps popping up over and over again. I'm like, God, how many times am I going to have to find a video of somebody pouring a shot of whiskey for this show, because it's just recurring all the time. So, but I'm in to buy a ghost a shot of whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
Just not putting it by Whiskey Dave.
Yeah, it will disappear by Whiskey Dave. That's for sure. You need to do it again.
Try it again.
It's weird. As soon as Dave fell asleep with his face on the bar, the whiskey stopped disappearing.
It's a miracle, actually. So to me, of all the places we cover here, other than the trail, because I think the trail, although the hauntings are probably more sporadic, feels like based on that tragic history, but also the amount of foot traffic that probably went through there in that 2 years and it being memorable is probably super haunted. But the one that's to me like really stood out is this Eagles Club. Another one that put two hotels together to make their building. So like this place was just playing like Legos to put this town together, right? So that was the one that was actually the one that made me do the episode, because I was reading about the Red Onion Inn, which I was interested in. I read a couple of the other ones, but when I read that one, that's what stood out, because I had a whole nother episode planned for tonight, and for some reason that jumped out, and just feeling that I felt from when we went to Maine and understanding. So that's the other thing, is understanding what she's talking about, because of experiencing something similar helped me understand what she was talking about in that article. I feel like you could read that article and not fully understand. You're like, oh, it's shadows. It's things that are just like moving around and you're not seeing it. But when you actually experience that and you know what she's talking about, the level of like chills it gives you the first time you read it, you're like, yeah, dude, I know what that is. I've seen that, so I totally understand it. It felt really, for the one that's so fake, this one felt so genuine reading the words that she was saying to this reporter.
Absolutely. And you're right. Like if you've experienced something similar, then it definitely hits you different. So it's definitely a creepy story. Of all the ghost stories, like this might not have the most history tied to it or whatever, but this one definitely had the scariest story in my opinion. Lucky Gypsy coming with 99-cent super sticker says for briefs, for Andrew's brief intermission. Yes. A very qualified guess. And,
all right.
And then I guess while we're off track here, Eric says, have you guys ever looked into Sleepy Hollow, New York? Robert, you're potentially going there, aren't you?
So I'll talk about it at the end of the show. I might be in Sleepy Hollow on Saturday. We'll save it for the end of the show, though.
Sounds good.
Sleepy Hollow might be in the Atlantic Ocean on Saturday. So
well, that's what we got to figure out. That's why we're going to talk about it at the end of the show. You just keep talking about it.
I just want to talk about it.
Let's talk about the Red Onion Inn. And let's talk about
I'm kidding. We'll wait for the end of the show.
Yeah, this mannequin deal is the most interesting part of this entire story. Like, how creative is this? They would dress them up to look like the girls that were working too, which I want to know what that means for mannequins in 1898 and 1899. Really awkward.
They must have just had like identical outfits for whatever the woman was wearing that night. They put the same outfit on the mannequin, which is, I've never heard anything like that. That's super unique.
It is very unique. And you go there and basically, if you didn't fully understand from the opening story, which is impossible because I'm a great narrator, they would have these mannequins standing up. There'd usually be 10, because I think there was like 10 cribs upstairs. And for those that haven't watched all the other episodes we've done on brothels, which I feel like I've covered all the brothels, a crib is basically like a little room where the girl would work. And the cribs that are in this place, I was watching a little documentary on this location. They were 3/4 the size of a twin bed. So they were even smaller than a twin bed. And it's just like, that's how small these rooms were that they were operating in. So
I wonder
a lot of positions were probably invented during this time.
I know, because the small beds. I know, seriously. I wonder if you couldn't afford the actual woman, if you could rent the mannequin for a discounted rate.
I mean, I wouldn't be shocked. I did. All right, so let's finish the mannequin thing, and then we'll talk about
Dave's interests here.
Yeah, all of Dave's fetishes just coming out here.
Yeah,
that's
the mannequins. Yeah. So basically, what would happen with these mannequins is they would be standing up, right? And as they're standing up, that means that those women were available. If they weren't available, basically they would lay them back down. So if they were laying down, you could not spend time with that woman, and when they were done, they would set them back up.
I wonder if you were the customer and you paid if you got to like knock over the mannequin, like just Superman punch the mannequin, be like, "Ah, it's my turn."
Now I'm wondering about.
I'm not allowed in brothels. I'm not allowed. I don't know why.
We
Might
keep
be the whole
checking.
marriage thing. I don't know. That or me abusing mannequins on my way in.
All right, so
I swear to God, babe, I just went there to knock over a mannequin. That's it.
God.
Anyways,
It's
moving
just
on.
the amount that Jesse cuts me off.
Will
in the
Pretzer
episode.
says you guys should check out Hammond Castle in Gloucester, Mass. Not far from you guys, obviously. I have actually been to Hammond Castle. It is a pretty cool place.
Yeah,
Also,
it
it
is.
is.
It was on the short list of things to cover in the future. We only have 5 episodes left, by the way. We're ending the show at 100 episodes.
I got so excited. I'm like, God, I get to see my family again.
Just kidding. We are not ending the show.
Contracts and stuff.
Yeah.
So the madam that we showed, Lil, that haunts the place, she was not available unless you had a lot of money. And the going rate translated to, in order to spend the night with them, the madam of the place, it was $10,000 for the night. What would equate to $10,000?
Oh, okay.
Whatever that
Still,
amount
that's
It
was.
was actually, yeah, I looked into this. It was like $1,000 at the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that actually is what it would add up to now, but this is what I was watching one of the tours, like the guided tours or whatever, and that's what she was saying was $1,000 for the night, or you could do like, I think it was like $100 for like 15 minutes or something like that, or for extra money. You
It was
could
$100 for an
spend-
hour, for her. But the other thing was, you also had to go to the doctors and get like waivers and everything signed that you were clean and all this other stuff. Like, so in order to spend the night with her, you had to actually like get checked out and stuff, which is very different than probably all the other brothels that were operating. How many women were actually making you go get a bill of health? Which is
For that much money, I better be able to grab that mannequin and just yeet it across the entire road.
I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of brothels did that because it was their business.
Through their
for the
mannequins in the road?
madams.
Well, no, it made the people get a clean bill of health.
Oh, yes.
Just
I
because
don't
that's your
think they
business.
did.
I wouldn't have thought that they did, but the fact that they did do it, that you're saying they did do it, doesn't
It
actually.
was only
shock
for
me.
her. It was only for
for her.
her. Only for the madam. And that's
I'm
my
surprised.
point.
I'm surprised the Better Call Soap guy wasn't outside signing fake doctor's notes for people.
He was probably disguising himself as one of the mannequins.
He stopped when he saw me coming. He's like, "Oh God, no! I've heard about this guy."
So that leads us into some of the hauntings at this building, which are relatively interesting. And by the way, they lean really into the history here. It's a restaurant now, but they also give some guided tours there. All the women that work there dress up as, they say, the women of the night would have dressed up in 1898 or 1899. But they give the guided tours, and they are partial to there being 3 ghosts that definitely communicate here. But I would say that this building, if you listen to my monologue, and which of course you should have, because I'm a great storyteller, as we've already gone over, this building has been everything. It's been an army barracks, it's been a TV station, it's been like a dance hall. Like, dude, this place has been everything. So the amount of different types of people that were coming through here and doing different occupations and staying in this building for extended periods of time, I don't think the spiritual activity would only be from that 2 to 3 years that it was a brothel. I would assume that maybe some other people that spent some time here would come back and haunt it. Maybe not, but I would assume, like, with the, frequency and hauntings in this town, that we'd probably have some more spirits. What they don't know who the male presence is. So I'm wondering if he even was one of the patrons of the brothel, or if he could have just been someone that was there at a different point in time. But he has a pretty wretched reputation. I guess like a very putrid smell follows him, that they just like, it's just this disgusting smell that they have every once in a while.
Could be something demonic. I mean, I don't know if there's any like real evidence of demonic things happening, but a lot of times that's something that happens when you're dealing with something devilish.
Well, we do have attacks, but they attribute the attacks to Lydia. They say that Lydia is the one attacking because it's only males that get attacked in this building, which, to your point, Jesse, going back to previous episodes, was the Sally house. The only people that were getting attacked in the Sally house were males. Right?
Heard of this in a lot of places. So it's not just men, but some places will only attack women. It does seem like this is something that's pretty common in a lot of places, is a certain, one certain sex is getting attacked. So that's why a lot of times you attribute it to, well, the spirit or whatever this is must be of the opposite gender that's attacking them. So it's tricky. But so is there any other evidence of it being, I mean, people getting attacked is obviously the most serious of haunts. When you have some sort of a rotten smell, then it could be something demonic. A lot of times demonic hauntings bring that sort of smell along with them. And
yeah, I mean, just like the other, like, it's like people getting pushed and like, it sounds like someone's getting shoulder charged. Like, how like people in the bar would walk by and just shoulder bump you to initiate.
Yeah.
God, yeah. Whiskey Dave. He didn't shoulder bump you. He'd walk up to you and lobster dance you in the face.
Have we ever had you do
the legend?
Have you ever done the lobster dance on stream before?
Have you?
Yes, once.
Would you care to show us the lobster dance one more time?
Listen, I'm not your fucking clown, okay?
I'm not a clown. You're a fucking lobster. Do it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm not gonna make him do it.
$20 and Dave will do the lobster dance. Anyways, yeah, so we do have those hauntings. We also have the inverse where the men are getting like caressed and also sweet whispers in their ears with nobody there, which they think is the former Madam Lil that's doing that. So kind of a wide range, but mostly to male patrons of the place. So it's an interesting haunting. I'd like to go there. I'd like to investigate it. Obviously, I mean, I say that I'm always like, is there ever a place that I would be like, I'm not going to go there and do it unless it's like underwater? I'm just not going to do that.
I don't know if you've heard, but I've actually started making a list. We could put this one on there.
There we go. But if we were to go to Skagway, the Eagles Club is the one that I particularly would want. Like, I'd be the most scared of doing, but would want to investigate. But the Red Onion would obviously be another place I would like to investigate as well. So,
absolutely, yeah, I think the Red Onion is probably first on my list. You did include some footage of a theater. Was that the theater, or was that just a different theater in the video?
No, there's the only actual footage of it was from like the variety show that I showed, so that would be the actual theater. But there's no there was no good footage of it to show on the episode, so I had to kind of improvise a little bit.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, but that's Skagway. That is it's a very active town. A lot of haunted things you can go on. You can find a story about the Red House. If you type in Skagway, the Red House, there's a interesting series of tales about it, but I couldn't find anything else on it, so I didn't want to include it. It really felt like almost like a fictional story. So if you're looking for another story to read about Skagway, read that, but understand that it's probably fiction, because I couldn't find anything else. So there's that. But yeah, Skagway.
Yeah, it was interesting. A lot more there than I thought there was going to be.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out if we should do break this up, but the thing is, it's like everyone was like, the hauntings are interesting, but sort of fast, like story wise. There's no like rich, like this family was here for 100 years, and you go through the family story. Everything was like 3 to 5 minutes on like getting the full story for it. So one episode for Skagway, unless we actually go there and do some investigation.
Cool. Which we should. Cool.
Yes.
We'll plan it. Yeah, that's such a cool location. And it's the views look amazing. The hauntings sound cool. And when you deal with an entire town that is allegedly haunted, then obviously there's plenty of places to hit there. So that's pretty sweet. Pretty sweet. So shall we thank our patrons real quick?
Yeah, let's thank our patrons, and then we will read some reviews, and then we will talk about Sleepy Hollow.
Cool. For our VIPs, we have Allison V, Dakota G, Jeannie R, Jennifer P, Lisa J, Mike Oubliette, Blake, Mom and Pops W, Nick, Robert H, Demon King, and Inspires Gaming, who also donated 10 gifted subs today in chat. Thank you again to Inspires Gaming. Again, check him out on Twitch. He's a good guy. We have for our Warren's Wards, Ambi Rose, Anna C, Kath Q, Chris C, LBPS founder, next HTGS guest. So that's something. That's something new, a new perk. You can declare yourself the next guest on Hometown Ghost Stories. Chris C, thank you so much. Cody G, DC, Donnie N, Elizabeth Young, Jake V, Janice G, Marfire, Matthew T, Papa Squatch, Rachel B, Sarah Cook, Steph A of the Church of the Stephanies, Stitch Kitten, Sydney B, the other Rachel B. Those are the Warren's Wards. For our Ghost Pirate Mafia, we have Adam S, Al Capone. Al Capone's allegedly poorly clothed folding bed. Al Capone's allegedly poorly taxidermied wife. Alicia E, Anthony character limits be damned T, Ashley M, Brandon W, Brennan aka Major Archibald Butt, Captain McSlugs, Colby0204 believes Adolf Peterson was a patsy. We have Crystal Quinn, Huska, Castle, Huggy Bear, Joe R. We have Killer Cows from Outer Space. We have Carolee J, Michaela T, Mina H, Mariah M. What the hell is happening on this Patreon's list? We have Nunhouse Queen, Paul from St. Louis, Pork, Sam from Nepal, Sarah R, Scotty L, Solar Flare, Soph is back, welcome back, and Hooper. We have the Big Spag Nasty, and Xenu is my homeboy, who actually is our first patron that pledged for an entire year. That is an option on Patreon. Woo! So you can get ahead of the game and not worry about renewing and doing all of that kind of stuff. You can sign up. It's a discounted rate if you apply for the entire year. Something to think about. So that took a long time. And this list is getting out of control. But, yes. We signed up for this, and that's what we're going to do. So little as $3 a month, you can jump on Patreon and get ad-free episodes, early access, bonus content. It is spooky season, ladies and gentlemen. That's time to play another one of these cool things.
Yeah,
that was so exciting.
That was really exciting. I'm so excited doing that.
Anyways,
all right, so $1 a month, you become a member on YouTube as well. Unlock member-only videos.
All right, so we have a 5-star review, and I just have to preface this with, if you write too long of a headline for your review, I can't see all of it, and they don't let me see all of it. So this is from Ben the Anatomist. And all I can see is this podcast will fill the empty hole that ... That's
kind of
because I can't see the rest of the word. Well, there's a C. There's a lot of things going on there. I don't want to.
This
speculate.
podcast will fill the empty hole that is this title.
There we go. They wrote, "Do you hate fishing in a lake of human soup? Then this podcast is for you." After searching for a good spooky podcast, I stumbled across this one a year ago, and I have been hooked since. Seriously, give it a listen. This show will fill that big empty ghost hole in your soul that yearns for all things ghastly and spooky. Ditto to all the other 5-star reviews. It's a well-produced show, and you'll love hearing the stories, history, debates, and speculation from the host. That is, if Dave's Taco Bell internet can stay connected long enough to make it through the episode. Keep up the awesome work, gentlemen, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this show will take you. Well, thank you so much, Ben, for that review and leaving one. And you too can leave a 5-star review, and you know what you get for it? Our gratitude. Thank you so much for doing it. We need it. It helps us out tremendously, and it's free, and it'll take you like 5 seconds. So
we actually have one more
review.
We have one more that I wanted to read. So yes. It's excellent when somebody leaves a 5-star review. It's even better when somebody leaves a review and then later updates it, because it just proves that they stayed with us the whole time and they're invested in our podcast. So we got an updated review from 80s Kid Forever. He says, "Hey guys, just wanted to drop back in to update my review and reiterate how amazing this show is. I've always been a pretty big scaredy cat my whole life, so I don't usually listen to scary podcasts. I wet my bed up until I was in my 30s. and then continue to do so up to and including present day.
Stop laughing, Rob.
It's actually a little embarrassing. I've become such a coward that my wife doesn't respect me and my son can't look me in the eye. Your show has been monumental in helping me overcome my abject cowardice. The episodes are extremely well put together, and the jokes are my favorite part. The comic relief is that which, it's the comic relief that I so much needed to help me get through the scary stuff. There are other shows out there, but this one is far superior. Hard pass on anything that isn't Hometown Ghost Stories. Thank you, 80s Kid Forever.
Thank you so much, 80s Kid Forever, for that amazing 5-star review.
That amazing, humbling, and strangely honest review. We appreciate you being such a dedicated fan of the show.
What a great guy. We appreciate you so much.
Man, I'm so glad he's been listening for so long. So,
keep talking because I actually have one in Discord that I need to find.
All right. Robert has one more. Hey, spooky season October's coming, October 20th. We have our episode 100 party. So we'll be in Plymouth, Massachusetts, October 20th. We'll be at Second Wind Brewing, downtown Plymouth. Great location, great brewery. Even if you don't drink beer, they have other options. If you don't drink alcohol, they have other options as well. If you don't drink water, you can come eat some chips, and we'll be having a little gathering there. So nothing too crazy. It's going to be very casual. Just come out, hang out. We'd love to see you guys. There is an event up on Facebook. If you go to our Facebook page, Hometown Ghost Stories, and you can check out the details there. And we'll be having some limited edition merch. I'm wearing some of it right now. This is not the limited edition stuff, but this is some new merch here. Hometown Ghost Stories sweatshirt. We'll have hats, and then we will have special episode 100 t-shirts, graphic tees. There is a limited number of these that we're going to get. They're going to go out first to our VIP patrons. Then it'll go out to people that actually show up to the event. And then the whatever's left will go for sale on the website, hometownghoststories.com. So we're very excited about this event, and we cannot wait to see some of you that can make it out. So October 20th, looking forward to it.
Yes, and I will read that other review next week because I cannot find it at the moment.
Very good.
But yes,
all right, then.
that episode's going to be, that event is going to be a ton of fun. I'm looking forward to hanging out with everybody, talking about Ghost in Plymouth in October, right at spooky season. It's going to be amazing. But let's talk about Sleepy Hollow. So as long as there's not a monsoon and
Dave, do you have a synopsis for us?
Yeah.
I don't, sorry.
Not that
Wow.
sleepy. All right.
I just like that you're giving yourself so much work right now. There is a paranormal convention in Sleepy Hollow this Saturday. So we are not being vendors there, but I think I might go check it out for a little bit. So if you're there early, I should be there for the first hour or so, barring whatever hurricane situation there is. And then after that, I am going to head over to PA, the Pennsylvania Horror Con, for a couple hours. So I'll be going from Sleepy Hollow to Pennsylvania. So if you're in either of those areas and you're looking for something to do that Saturday, I'm going to be there. We can high five and buy some spooky stuff. So
just knock over whatever mannequins you come across and call it a day.
Yeah. Lay them down. Just lay down the mannequin so that they know that they're in use. What a great vending table that would be.
I don't know why I'm banned. Anyways, anything else, gentlemen?
That's going to do it for me.
All right, we'll see you guys. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching another episode of Hometown Ghost Stories. If you like this video, be sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so you can see exactly when we go live. Spoiler, it'll be every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I know what you're thinking. We're all thinking it. Where have all of our reviews gone? Well,
We've moved all of our horror movie reviews as well as other reviews over to a brand new YouTube channel. It is brand new, it is small, it is thirsty for new subscribers. So if you like horror movies, if you like horror video games, horror TV series, even horror books, swing on over to HTGS Reviews and drop a subscribe on our brand new, pathetically small and starving new channel. Hey, it needs you and we need you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next week for a brand new episode.